Good evening. We'll call to order the meeting of the Dudley Charlton Regional School District School Committee. It is Wednesday, February 8th at 7 p.m. We're at Shepherd Hill Regional High School. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will take a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. We're going to go to number 4, the Shepherd Hill Regional High School 50th Anniversary Logo Design. Sydney Rowland, please.
We're going to invite Principal Elwell.
Oh, and Principal Elwell. Great. Do we have a seat for Sydney and Principal Elwell?
There's one over there.
Oh, we've got one right there. Yes, please give the mic.
Thank you, Mr. Packard.
So once again, this evening, it's my privilege to introduce you to one of the best students that Shepherd Hill has to offer. And you may recall from a previous meeting that we have begun a number of initiatives in recognition or in order to celebrate Shepherd Hill's 50th anniversary. And so back in the fall, when we began brainstorming ideas to commemorate this occasion, one of the initiatives that we put in motion was a logo competition that we commissioned working with Mrs. Lashua, Mrs. Hines, our art teachers. We asked that students take this opportunity to think about Shepherd Hill's history and what Shepherd Hill represents to them, and to develop a logo that reflects that sense of what Shepherd Hill means to them. And so back in the fall, we had roughly 73 entries as a result of students in the visual arts classes engaging in this assignment. And initially, those 73 entries went to a faculty-wide vote, and then we narrowed it down to several, and ultimately, senior Sydney Rowland's design was the overwhelming choice, which is what you see behind me on display on this easel, which is probably original to 1972, likely constructed with trees felled from this site, you never know. Still in service, still good. But more importantly, you'll see Sydney's design. We're so fortunate to have so many students who have talents across content areas, across our extracurricular activities, and certainly in our visual and performing arts departments as well. And Sydney is one of those students who tonight will be speaking to her talents and her contributions as an artist. So before Sydney speaks to her design, it's my privilege to present the Certificate of Appreciation to Sydney Rowland, who is being recognized for her outstanding artistic contribution to the Shepherd Hill learning community. So Sydney's going to share a little bit of the creative genius with us now.
Well, it's not so much complete that as it is trial and error and error and error, and then, oh wow, I have a design now. Okay, so honestly, what I was trying to go with when I was tasked with creating this design was something that was original, that spoke to our school's past, but was also kind of brand new at the same time. So I made sure, honestly, I wanted to do my research to see what we have had for like some of our graphic design, our various logos, or our various, for our sports teams or our show choirs and stuff, to see what we've kind of made up in the past, and then kind of give like new life to it that speaks to the school and also the district as a whole, which is part of the reason why I wanted to add our signature DCRSD shield and torch, which represents us as an entire district. So, and as well as the Shepherd Hill logo, but the main thing that I kind of worked around with this was our mascot, the ram. And I saw opportunity in the fact that the horns of a ram are often, they can work as a very efficient zero. And I'm like, wait a minute, can use this as our like a 50. The ram is the actual 50 itself, and I thought that might be a cool idea to work off of, but like we've had the ram as our mascot for like a long, long time, but I wanted to do something completely new with it, like something that we haven't done before. So I wanted to completely redesign the ram using the colors from our school mainly in the design. And this was what I was able to come up with, and I wanted to kind of give it more of a professional aesthetic as we sometimes have in like other high schools and colleges, so that we can be proud of what we have as our mascot and the pride, unity, and excellence that this school represents.
Very well said.
Great. Does anybody have any questions for Sydney or Principal Elwell?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Do we want a picture, Ms. Lawrence? Ms. Lawrence,
I'm sorry?
do we want to take a picture too for our website or anything?
Yeah, and someone want to take a picture? No?
I think we should do that.
Huh?
With us?
Well, at least with her with it.
Yeah, we have one with her and Principal Allen, right?
Well, her dad has one.
Oh, her dad has one. Oh, yes. Yes, we need one too, yeah.
Do you want to say Miss Principal Ella wants it?
Great. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda items. We have the following item. We have minutes of the regular meeting of December 14th and January 11th. We have approval of the warrant voucher 1053 to 1060. We have Massachusetts Interstate Athletic Association middle level waiver for boys lacrosse, girls lacrosse, and softball. And then we have policy IJOA, out-of-state travel for the class of 23 senior class trip to Block Island, and the jazz choir competition, sorry, my voice, in Southington, Connecticut. So, do we have any? I would take a motion. Thank you. I take a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
So moved. Second.
Okay, great. Is there any discussion? We don't have discussion on consent agenda. We all set? Ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor? Wonderful. Okay, that passes. Moving on to communications, I'll start. I had one communication from our CPAC, and they would like to come in and talk about budgetary issues as it relates to special education. So we were going to invite them into our March 1st budget workshop. If they want to do a further presentation of CPAC itself, we'll invite them at a later time for that. But so I'll be doing that. Anyone else? Yes, go ahead.
Madam Chair, School Committee, I do have a communication. It's really centered around upcoming meetings for the School Committee. We've been working with the towns of Charlton and Dudley on these meetings. I will certainly comprise this in an email to the full committee, but this was worked on today. February 15th, next Wednesday, is a meeting with the Charlton FinCom at 7 p.m. February 27th is a meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the FAA in Dudley at 6:30 p.m. There is an optional meeting on March 9th with the Board of Selectmen and FAA for Dudley. That's when they're working on their town budget. The invitation is there for the schools. March 20th is the Board of Selectmen, FAA of Dudley again, and that's to vote on the override. Those meetings typically start at 6:30 p.m. I don't see any reason why they would change, but we don't have the exact time at that point. And then later in the meeting, I will recommend a community forum for the town of Dudley and Dudley Charlton Regional School District to talk about the override in our auditorium on March 22nd, which is the second school committee meeting in the month of March. And we would certainly, obviously, invite the town of Charlton as well. But it's really a community forum on the override.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, anyone else? No. We'll move on to the student representative report. Ms. Lombardi.
Yo. Alrighty, so,
what I have so far for my student representative report for this meeting is that the ASVAB test is coming to Shepherd Hill, which is like the military test. It's supposed to help you with the military. I don't really know much about it, but it's on March 21st at 8 a.m. and there's no fee to take it. It's free. You just have to sign up, I'm fairly certain. Drama club tryouts are tomorrow, just another high school play from 2:30 to 3:30. You must sign up in Miss Griffin's in 227. Join Treble Voices on February 18th, or in 185 on February 8th after school, which was today. There are carnation pre-sales at all 4 lunches, $2 for 1 carnation and 3 carnations for 5. The pickup for the flowers is on the 14th in the morning. Also February 8th, Ukulele Club after school, which was today at 3:30. Very cool kids. Flannel Day, Friday, 2:10 to support GSA on National Flannel Day. Shepherd Hills Show Choir had a successful festival last week with the middle school, Charlton coming in first place, Charlton Middle School Mirage. For the small mix, I believe it was Scantlin High School. The unisex, I want to say, oh my God, I'm blanking. I don't remember who won the unisex, but I know Vibe Daniel Han won Best Vocals, Best Choreography for Large Mix. And our show choir, Illusion and Fantasy, will be going to Tantasco this weekend to compete. We hope to win. The Spirit Week for next week before vacation is Monday, PJ Day, Tuesday, Valentine Colors Day. Wednesday is Groutfit Day, which is gray outfits. Thursday is Ballers versus Scholars. Friday is Teacher Outfit Day. And next week there will be a mental health assembly for awareness. So next week, the 14th and 15th, the grades are going to be going down to assemblies with speakers, and they're going to be educating us on mental health and like looking for the signs in other people, but also yourself, which is something that I'm looking forward to. We also have spring sports sign-ups. They close March 3rd for baseball, softball, track and field, and lacrosse. Creativity Club will meet tomorrow, February 9th, after school in room 209. All are welcome. And NHS applications are due to room 201 by February 17th and no later.
Thank you, Olivia. Yes.
Olivia, in my report, I talk about this past weekend as well, but I learned something new this weekend, that when you host, you can't place. Is that?
Yeah, you didn't know that?
I did not know that. I did not know that.
No, because we're the host school, so, and the judges sometimes are like our directors, and it would be biased, so, I don't mean that, in a, but also because.
Of course they'd be biased, what?
I mean, yeah, we're awesome, so, but like, especially here, like, Illusion is one of the top unisex in New England, and, we win a lot, so gotta give the other groups a little time to win.
So that means next weekend in Tantasco can't place either.
Oh,
correct?
no, they can't, no.
Right,
So
that's-
Encore and Radiance, which is, Encore is their mixed group, and Radiance is their unisex group, can't place. But technically, if we did get scored, Illusion would have been in first, and, like, Fantasy was in second or something like that.
Yeah, it was an interesting tidbit that I learned this weekend, so. Sorry, that's it.
No, that's okay. We're on to you for superintendent's report.
Madam Chair and School Committee, I do have a couple of items to report out this evening. One, I do want to publicly thank the Charlton and Dudley Town administrators and representatives from the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, and FAA, which is the Finance Appropriations and Advisory Committee members from the Town of Dudley, for attending last week's school committee meeting, all boards meeting, February 1st. The meeting did provide the opportunity to understand the fiscal dilemma facing the Dudley-Charlton Regional School District, but also the Town of Dudley. The conversation is uncomfortable for all parties, as the cost of services and commitments to our students, staff, and communities has increased dramatically. The request for a combined override for the Town of Dudley does not come lightly for any of us, including the Town of Dudley. For the Dudley-Charlton Regional School District, the value of the request is to maintain level service experience for our students of the Dudley Charlton Regional School District. Significant increases in the cost for services is the driver behind this difficult request for us. Mr. Richard Matthew and I have been working with town administrators for some time on the need for a closer look at the fiscal systems for our district and for their community, with their communities. We thank them we can't thank them enough for their partnership with this endeavor. We've been working, even from the last meeting of last Wednesday, we've spent quite a bit of time with town officials working on stuff to include today, all the way through today. So I just wanted to, again, thank the communities for being part of that meeting, a very important meeting. The next item I have is I want to report out that Principal Elwell was informed that Shepherd Hill Regional High School was awarded an additional $10,000 in grant funding through the Innovation Pathways Grant. We greatly appreciate the support of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education to support our innovative pathways, as well as the Governor of Massachusetts. The next item, I know this is an update. The work continues with the Ed Davis Company to review our multi-hazard approach within our district. We do have training coming up for us. The administrators are scheduled for April 5th from 1 to 4:30 p.m. with facilitators from the Ed Davis Company, and a larger group training with first responders from Dudley and Charlton, as well as Dudley Charlton administrators, is scheduled for May 9th from 11 to 3:30 p.m. We don't have the exact details ironed out for that, because we hope to have some availability for others to come in and see that, what that looks like. We're working on those logistics. Currently, our real focus is, other than multi-hazard items for us, are really looking at how we as a district respond to active shooter, how we as a district relocate, if we need to relocate from our 7 schools, and then how do we actually reunify our students with their parents. Those are really the focus points for us. We do have protocols for those things, but we haven't practiced those, and so this will be a great exercise for us to take a look at that. To date, we have almost 100% of Dudley Charlton staff trained in ALICE protocols. We have more planning ahead for the next steps with a goal for full implementation of ALICE protocols next year. As a reminder, we do currently have protocols in place now that we will update for next year, but we're going to use them instead of changing mid-year. And we will conduct a lockdown drill in the near future to meet our expectations of 3 lockdown drills per school year that we set last year. The next item I have is I am pleased to announce that Charlton Elementary School was victorious in the 2023 Dudley Charlton Education Foundation Venmo Challenge. DCEF will provide a staff breakfast for all Charlton Elementary School staff. So congratulations to Charlton Elementary School. Additionally, please remember that the DCEF, Dudley Charlton Education Foundation, will be holding their first ever Heroes Among Us celebration Saturday, April 1st, 2023. Yes, that is not a typo. April 1st, April Fool's Day, they will be having a celebration. It's a Saturday. And President Sabrina Webb has requested, and we'll work with her to come to a school committee meeting to announce to you as a school committee who the Heroes Among Us will be, recipients will be. And also, Dudley Charlton Education Foundation rolled out a brand new website for their foundation, and so I put the link on there. Feel free to go take a look at their new website. It looks fantastic. Next item is the Boys and Girls Club of Webster Dudley had their annual meeting January 17th, 2023. Dudley students were recognized at that annual meeting. Miss Mary Carmignani led the room in the Pledge of Allegiance, and Miss Cecilia Donahue spoke about her experience at the club to approximately 80 guests. Also, Dudley's Kristen Mayotte, a parent, former, well, I don't think she doesn't have any children in the school, but we'll call her a parent. She's still a mother to a lot of people, so we'll say that. She was one of the first of 2 first ever Boys and Girls Club of Webster Dudley Alumni Hall of Fame recipients. So congratulations to Kristen Mayotte for receiving that prestigious award.
She's also our vice president, I believe, of the
Dudley Charlton Education Foundation, yes. Yeah. She's very involved in our schools.
Yes.
Yeah. This past weekend, as Olivia was saying, Shepherd Hill was a whirlwind. Boy, did that take over the building. From Friday night all the way through Saturday. 22 schools were represented for 26 show choirs for Central Mass Show Choir Festival. It was amazing. I did bring my daughter. We did attend a couple of the performances. We did get to see Shepherd Hill, and that's why I was asking the questions about where'd you place and all that, because I thought the performance was unbelievable. I'm sorry?
Which one was your favorite? Be honest.
What do you,
It's like trying
Which-
to pick out your favorite kid, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm friends with a lot of people from other
The
schools.
first one, which is it was all female. I don't know how.
The
it's-
unisex group, which from Shepherd Hill?
Yeah,
Oh, Illusion.
Illusion, yeah, sorry.
Oh.
I don't have all the names down. Even Charlton Middle School
didn't
is
either.
called Mirage, and Dudley Middle
Well,
School
yeah,
is
like-
called
Illusion, We Strong.
Prestige. Yes, it's called Prestige, yes, yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
Yes, Prestige.
So the middle schools also participated. It was great. The performances were awesome. Congratulations to Shepherd Hill students, and I truly wish you good luck next week at next weekend at Tantascwa. I have to continue to reiterate that you are one of the hardest working groups in this school, and I certainly know that because in my office, sometimes working late at night, and so aren't you. So, yes, and on the weekends as well, so congratulations. Last Wednesday, February 1st, 2023, Director Bergeron and I attended the Special Education Parents Advisory CPAC Coffee and Conversation with CPAC Chair Ms. Kenny LaFerrier and DCRSD School Committee Liaison Ms. Jean Costello. We met at the Sturbridge Coffee Roasters in Charlton. While we did not have a large crowd, we had positive conversations and listened to experiences that are important for Director Bergeron and myself to hear. We look forward to another opportunity to have coffee and conversation with CPAC in the future. And then as part of my report, ongoing, since school committee has set their budget priorities, I've listed those as well within this document. So that concludes the superintendent's report this evening. Oh, I'm sorry. You also have the flyer for the Heroes Among Us attached to it. You don't have it in the packet that was passed out tonight, but it is online. You have the annual meeting for the Boys and Girls Club of Webster Dudley. And then I also included the February 6, 2023 Titan Times Dudley Middle School newspaper into the packet as well, which I thought was great as well. So that concludes the superintendent's report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to public comment. We'll initially set public comment for 20 minutes. Just a reminder that we have, each person has 3 minutes to speak, and we will start, let's see, yep, we'll start now, 7:23. Great. If anybody would like to come up for public comment, please do so.
Do you want me to type? You want to type? How much is that?
Yeah, you can join Jamie, that's fine.
Good evening. My name is Vanessa Poklowski. I'm currently a junior here at Shepherd Hill, and I stand before you tonight to bring awareness to the Dudley budget override, an issue that will heavily impact the lives of current students and those of the future. I have come today to bring to you a student's perspective, the perspective of someone who is active in the DCRSD community every single day, and the perspective of someone who will feel the consequences if the budget is not passed. Often in difficult financial situations, such as these, we fixate on the numbers, the bottom line, the dollars and the cents. And that is understandable as we seek a viable solution. But in the process, we often lose sight of what the money represents. For many students, the DCRSD provides interactive and unique class options. Others enjoy the impressive sports opportunities we offer, and even for some, our district is a safe and exciting environment for them to grow relationships and escape the stress of the outside world. This is what every dollar and cent represents. If the budget is not passed, it deprives our district the ability to provide its students with the best education and environment possible. One of these consequences is the fact that class sizes will drastically increase. As a result, smaller AP classes and courses would likely be canceled, along with AP students being pushed into less academically rigorous classes. Although these students will be able to pass such classes with relative ease and graduate, at what point will we realize that we are sacrificing their preparation for future endeavors and their ability to excel? As a student currently involved in 3 APs, along with all accelerated classes, I'm grateful to be on the right path to be prepared for challenges of higher education. But will future students be able to say the same thing? One of the APs I'm privileged to be enrolled in currently is AP Seminar, a class that has taught me how to write, research, and publicly speak at a collegiate level like I am doing here tonight. I cannot imagine what the remainder of my educational career would look like without being in this class. Now, for some students, it's their math, their history, or their science classes to motivate them to learn more and feel some purpose when they attend school. Today, I'm echoing the sentiments of hundreds of students when I say that the Dudley override is necessary and must be passed, not only for the students currently at Shepherd Hill, but for all students district-wide and for generations to come. What kind of educational experience will we provide with increasing class sizes, cutting teaching positions, limiting our sports programs, and canceling extracurriculars and clubs? These provide a forum for students to learn, compete, and grow together. And the truth is, for some, it's all they have. I have faith that our community can see beyond dollars and cents and understand the effects that this will have on our students in our future. Without passing the budget, we will not only fail of our students today, but also fail those of just future generations. Thank you for your consideration.
Vanessa, thank you very much. Vanessa, did you practice getting that under 3 minutes?
I did, yes.
That was beautiful. You were like 2:57. That was great. No, thank you so much for all the information on that, too. Great. We heard you did a great job at the selectmen meeting as well.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? And I'm sorry, I forgot to say, when you come up, you need to state your name and which town you're from.
Yep.
Okay.
Good evening, members of the school committee. My name is Daniel Lincoln, and I'm currently a junior from Dudley. Through my time here at Shepherd Hill, I've been privileged to be a member of the soccer team, track team, and National Honor Society. As you can see, I am very invested in the school and the programs it offers. Out of all these teams and clubs, I've learned a valuable skill of time management. I often return home around 5:15 or later after practices, meetings, or games. As a teenager, I do have chores and part-time job to fit into my schedule, but at the same time, I must complete homework that has been assigned. In turn, I must be able to manage my time and not waste it. I've learned to be more productive than most other students who do not partake in extracurricular activities. As I'm constantly running around, my mother often questions how my grades are so high. I say it is because of the organization skill that I've mentioned here tonight, because it helps me to understand the material better and receive better grades. Though I understand this might not work for all students, I personally know that this works for me and others. I believe that it would be an injustice to the student body to take away extracurricular activities in which students have the chance to learn this valuable skill. On top of the skill, other problems arise if extracurricular activities are cut. I feel that the students of Shepherd Hill will suffer in many different ways. For some, they will lose a way to make friends or express themselves. Not to mention how colleges will view Shepherd Hill if these activities are cut. If my peers are no longer able to add this to their transcripts, they'll be given a disadvantage towards other students from different school districts. So this evening, I ask you as members of the school committee to consider my reasoning and the reasoning of my peers as to not cut the budget in areas that will affect the current and future students of Shepherd Hill.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Do we have anyone else? Great.
Hello, my name is James Pufferman, and I am from Charlton. As a current student at Shepherd Hill Regional High School, I implore you the necessity for the override. Last budget cut was hard enough on the students already, removing classes and opportunities. For me, I lost the chance to take classes that I need to take to further my education in the major I wish to take in college. For some students, they lost the ability to finish 4 years of French, while others never had the opportunity to take one class, as well as other classes. These downsizes have been devastating already, and now we're readying up to lose more. Students lose more teachers, more classes, with cuts to the music program, sports, and other extracurricular activities. It's unfair for students now and for students to come to lose out on these prospects to learn and enrich their lives. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, James. Great.
Good evening. My name is Harry Kennan. I'm from Charlton, and I have had the distinct pleasure of attending Shepherd Hill Regional High School for the last 2.5 years. During that time, the integrity and ingenuity of the teachers in that building has never failed to impress me, inspire me, and even improve me. There is very little that I would not do to repay them for everything they have done. If we were asking for an override of $3,665,000 in tax dollars for the purposes of financing additional programs, purchasing additional technology, or hiring additional employees, we would understand and even share your skepticism. Were our intentions to secure funding for superfluous or inessential causes, we would be content to throw down our rhetorical weapons without hesitation and let the chips fall where they may. But these are no such requests. The resources our schools stand to lose should this override fail are nothing less than incontrovertible necessities. And should they lose them, a generation of youth will be on the road to receiving a half-realized, half-baked, half-fulfilled education that will be wholly inadequate in meeting their individual needs. We will be responsible for burying their talents and quashing their ambitions. And in my opinion, COVID-19 has been detrimental enough to the education of the current generation of children without this looming reduction of resources rubbing salt in that still open wound. But let's examine exactly what is at stake here. Firstly, there is the increase in class sizes to 27 students per classroom, and I hardly need to tell you why that is unacceptable. Class sizes are already higher than our institutions are capable of supporting, and the students in those classrooms are already suffering as a result. And on top of that, whoever is assigned to fit 27 desks and chairs into a chemistry lab had better be a lot better at Tetris than I am, because I can't see myself figuring that one out. But the only reason that an increase in class size would save any money is that it comes hand in hand with the elimination of up to 16 faculty members from across our district. Earlier, in this very address, I used the word resources, in part to refer to our teachers, and I cannot apologize enough for having done that. The educators in our school system are some of the most hard-working individuals I know, and it is an insult to their profession to reduce them to such a dehumanizing term. So let's all stop hiding behind deceptively verbose language and call a reduction in 16.0 FTE what it is. Firing teachers. It is, in my opinion, an entirely unconscionable act. Should the town of Dudley vote against this override, it will result in the overcrowding of classrooms that are already far too overcrowded, the understaffing of an institution that is already woefully understaffed, and the cutting of funds for programs that simply have nowhere left to cut. However, people without children in the school system may wonder why their tax dollars are being sent to causes from which they see no tangible benefit, and honestly, that's totally fair. Especially in today's economy, the government at any level should not be asking its citizens to finance any projects that are not absolutely necessary. But this is. And to those of you without children in the school system, I would ask you to look back at a time when you were rising through the grades, and at all the possibilities and opportunities that were afforded to you. Because someone invested in your future. And now, we are asking you to invest in ours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harry.
Hello, my name is Sophia Poplowski. I'm from the town of Dudley, and if you're wondering what is on my head, it is a headpiece in Shepherd Hill Fantasy's show this year. Just letting you guys know, I'm coming from fantasy practice right now, so we have practice from 5 to 8, but this topic is really important to me, so I thought I would show up and kind of speak about specifically the show choir and music department. So I've had the privilege of competing with some of the most genuine and passionate people I've ever met. And I think if I had that opportunity ripped away from me, I wouldn't understand what it means to like face rejection and face fear and face really like terrible struggles as a person. And despite all of the hardships I've faced in the music department, whether that's comparing myself to others or keeping up with the fast pace and like elite levels of show choir and marching band, I don't think I would be the person I am today. And I think on over this weekend when we competed at home show, our goal was not to impress like the judges, but it was to impress young people that were watching in the audience. One of my teacher's daughters came to the show, and she's only 5 years old, and we really wanted her to feel some type of passion that I felt when I first watched the Shepherd Hill Show Choirs. And I just think it's so important that we have so many opportunities, whether that's the music department or AP classes or any kind of sport that might be at risk of being cut, to have these people grow and learn how to communicate with people and find their passions. And I think being especially on leadership for a show choir has taught me to take my own stance and to kind of find my own path in the future. And I think it was very important for me to do that at such a young age, because now I know how to handle that at only 17 years old. And some people don't learn that until they graduate college. So I just wanted to share my importance and my exigence of needing the music department specifically, because it just helps people grow not only as like people, but as performers and communicators. And yeah, so thank you for your time.
Anyone else? Question? Yes?
I have a comment.
You can
as-
mic whenever you want, Olivia.
Yeah.
To some degree.
I Like Sophia, I'm in the music department, and I've been in it since I was in 8th grade after my friend Alice was like, hey, you should join this, because my little brother was in it, and I joined when I was in 8th grade. And the amount of friends and family and staff that have helped me so much is insane. Like, the community that show choir curates is out of this world. And like, even from other schools, like, I have friends from other schools. Like, the unisex groups, I'm friends with a lot of the girls from the unisex groups. Like, Illusion may be like this crazy, like, big thing, but we didn't like just be great immediately. Like, we had to build that foundation, and like with these budget cuts, we're just tearing all that down. All that hard work and all that connection and communication and love that's been built from school to school to school and affects alumni and parents and grandparents and kids to come. So this is something that holds dear to my heart in the music program.
Thank you, Olivia. Again, last call. Anybody? Any more takers? I will just say that we are honored that you took time out of your busy schedules to come here tonight. It means a lot to us to have the student voice. It's extremely important because you're just as much a citizen of Dudley as we are. So thank you for coming tonight. And Charlton. Okay, we will move on to new business. We'll go to A, the report of the Director of Finance and Operations, Capital Outlay Safety Subcommittee, and the Budget and Finance Subcommittee, Director Matthew and Chair Terry. Who's going first?
Oh, no, I will definitely allow you to have the floor.
Okay, well, are you going to talk about capital?
Do you want me to talk about capital right now?
If you choose to, if not, I can.
I think, why don't we have you talk about capital, and then we'll move it over. Are you ready? Sure. Okay.
We had a capital and safety subcommittee meeting last Friday via Zoom, and we met with the architect for the roof projects that we have been approved for and we're moving forward on, and we are on track for everything that we needed to be on track for, and we expect the bids to help me. That's this week, right, Ms. Matthew?
Yes, I believe they'll be in the central register as of next week.
Next week, okay, I apologize, I thought it was this week. And so we're in really good shape for where we need to be. We expect that project, both of those projects, to move forward come the summer, and we are hopeful that the completion time will still occur before school starts.
Wonderful.
I figure that, Ms. Lamarche, you might talk about the MSBA.
Yeah, that's the last item.
Then I will not talk about that.
All right, so as I said in my initial memo to school committee, bids were slated to be opened yesterday at 10 a.m. At district office. I had indicated that I hope to bring good news, and as I indicated in my email to you today, while we did not have a reduction in our expected budget for FY 24 compared to 23, the increase did come in with our projected numbers for the FY 24 budget. So it is good news. It's not the best news. I would have loved to have seen, oh, Dudley Charlton, you went back out to bid. We're going to lower the price from this year. That didn't happen, but that's also not realistic. The low responsible bidder was First Student. The bid result will result in an increase to our budget of $396,373. But again, our projected budget increase was $400,000, so they were able to come in just under. My recommendation to school committee is to approve this bid. Once that's complete, I will work with First Student to try to provide some level of cost savings or cost avoidance to the district. There's no guarantee with that, but I feel that this time around, we're not approaching them saying, you know, we're up against it. We want to secure our contract for next year, and then we can hopefully have a more positive negotiation with them afterwards.
Would you like to? Okay. I would entertain a motion to accept the bid from First Student.
So moved. Second.
Who's second?
Jamie?
Either one.
Is there any discussion? Sure.
And just reviewing the bids, I was curious about the late buses and if they're required or if that is just something that's nice to have in the district.
The district has historically provided that level of service for students, as we see here today, that stay after for after-school programs, et cetera. But there is no requirement per Mass General Law or through DESI to provide those.
And there's 8 of them, is that correct?
Yes, we run various ones from here in Dudley Middle as well as Charlton Middle.
Okay. Is there any data that could be, could support if those late buses are utilized? I only ask because when I am picking up my children from school, I find that there's not a lot of kids that get on the late buses. And while it's a great thing to have, I was just curious if maybe the first student could provide any data on the number of riders approximately, or if the principals are able to provide that type of information.
Well, I can certainly reach out to first student and ask them to keep track of the numbers over the course of a couple of weeks and report back to school committee.
That would be great. Okay.
And then one other thing, I just noticed the part about field trips, and I know that the Dudley PTO always does provide some funds for each field trip for K through 8. So I was just curious how that affects the budgeted amount that is in that bid too.
The transportation line items cover just the daily buses and the late buses that we were just talking about. The field trips are on an as-needed basis, and usually, you know, the vast majority of those are athletic events and those sorts of things, so
Okay.
that's in the athletic budget.
Okay, thank you.
Did you have a question?
I didn't want to go before other school committee members if they had questions, sorry.
Why don't you go, and then we'll keep going.
really Okay.
have a question, just a comment, so
Okay.
Madam Chair and School Committee, what member Ms. Panzik was talking about is a value of $96,000 for the late buses. Just, the value wasn't thrown out there, so I just wanted to make sure that everybody, we were all on the same page, that there was a question about $96,000 within that, and whether there was savings, cost savings that could be, captured savings that could be in that particular line. I just want to remind you as a committee and the community that the reason why this bid came in lower, and the school committee did take the extraordinary step of rejecting the bids before and going back out to bid, was for 2 reasons. One, we are now accepting an older bus now within our contract. So I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. That's as you prepare your vote. And also that the following years within the contract were capped at 2%, they are now uncapped for those subsequent years, correct, Mr. Matthew?
They're actually capped at 4%, so
They-
we have known increases for the following years.
So they went from 2% to 4% for the following years. I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of those particular details. There wasn't anything else in the bid that was different.
That's correct.
Yeah, those were the important items which lowered the cost in this first fiscal year to bring it into what we projected last week when we spoke to everybody. So I just wanted to make sure that I pointed that out.
Great, thank you. Who else wanted to speak? Jean, you had a comment?
So, I mean, I understand trying to save money with the late buses, but, and we might be putting the cart in front of the horse, because we'll also be talking about where we might also find $500,000 if the override doesn't pass in Dudley. But as an equity standpoint, I never would have been able, as a student here, to be able to do any of the activities I did if it wasn't for the late buses. And I know there are a vast majority of other students that have that same concern on being able to do activities. So I think the late buses are very, very important. I was a frequent rider on the 3:30 and the 5:30 at Shepherd Hill.
Do we have two late buses?
We have multiple late buses from Shepherd Hill.
No, 2 different times?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Great. Thank you for bringing up that equity issue, because I think that's important. And especially since some students also stay after, probably for extra help as well.
Right, and then also at the middle schools, because my kids wouldn't be able to do after-school activities at the middle schools if it wasn't for those buses, so.
Agreed.
I have another point.
Yes, and then I think we'll. Okay, go ahead.
I also think that, for clarity, if there's students out there that need the late buses and they're not being utilized because the routes have been, I think, the same for as long as I can remember, like the routes, I live within walking distance of the school, so it's not as big of a deal for my neighborhood. But if there's students that require or need to use the late buses and they can't because they don't live in those routes, I'm noticing that they're not utilized, so maybe updating the routes based on where they need to go and who needs them would be wise of us to. So I'm not saying get rid of them, but I'm just noticing they're not being utilized, so I'm wondering why.
Ms. Terry?
I was just gonna ask, it looks like there's 8 buses, for late bus, and so I know 2 are at Charlton Middle School. Are 4 at Shepherd Hill and 2 at Dudley Middle School?
Yes. Again, from Shepherd Hill, we have to bus to both Dudley and Charlton.
Yeah, I understood that. Okay, I just wanted to kind of understand that breakdown. And then, would this be the appropriate time, Mr. Matthew, to talk about what I had called you about yesterday?
If you like, sure.
Okay, so I was at a Music Parents Association meeting yesterday, and we discussed that the district has, correct me if I say this wrong, but some in-house buses that we have access to. I think it's 1 this year. Am I correct with that?
We own one of our own buses, and First Student has agreed to provide a bus to us as well for our own drivers.
Okay, and so that bus, those 2 buses handle our, some of our athletics, some of our show choir, some of our field trips, some of those types of activities. But if they're utilized in some manner, for example, next year for Lake Compounds, the buses are already booked. Maybe I have this wrong. Last year for Lake Compounds, the buses were already booked, so the middle school had to pay for that bus for Lake Compounds for that day. And it was $2,200 for that one day for the bus, for the students to get there. Just the Charlton Mirage students, and the jazz band in Charlton, not Dudley, a Prestige, and, they had to pay their own and do their own bus. And so that's a lot of money, in my opinion, for every time one day goes out. If there's competitions, anytime the show choir goes out at Shepherd Hill or at the 2 middle schools. And so I called Mr. Matthew and said, is this something that we could negotiate into our contract as a way to save money, essentially, a cost avoidance for our district, that the bus company is willing to let us use additional buses during the year for our athletic events, for our music events, for our after-school activities, because we're signing a new contract with them. So that's something that is going to be discussed, is what I understand.
Yeah, as I indicated, we're certainly going to approach them and look for either cost savings or cost avoidance.
Great, thank you. Good idea.
Thanks. I was pretty proud of myself
Yeah,
on that.
good one. Anyone else? Yes.
Just to piggyback off that, especially with the buses, I was originally, the Shepherd Hill Show Choir was supposed to go to Virginia this year, but we couldn't find buses to actually take us to Virginia, so if, we own a bus, let's take that. I would be okay with that. That's the problem.
I don't know that you want to go to Virginia in a yellow school bus.
Honestly, I could live it. I could do it. I'm built different.
Okay, all right.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Could I clarify the motion?
please do.
So the motion is to award a 5-year contract with a 3-year fixed term and 2 years that are optional for the district. Is that correct?
It can be, yeah.
Jean made the motion. So, yes. Okay.
Yes,
That's how I remember moving it.
Thank you.
okay. All right, all those in favor? Great.
Thank you.
We are motion carried, thank you.
The next is just a piece of information about the Massachusetts-sponsored free lunch program. As everybody, I'm sure remembers, during COVID, the federal government was paying the bill. So indeed, there was a free lunch for all students. That ended at the end of the last school year. At the start of this school year, Massachusetts picked up that ball and ran with it. Unfortunately, their budgetary estimates were a little less than exact, and the anticipated shortfall for this program is $65 million. It's slated to run out of money as of March 2023. There has been legislation filed by our new governor in the supplemental budget that would provide for that funding, but as of now, as far as I am aware, that has not yet passed. March is not that far away, so all I can say is this is not something that's in school committees' direct control, nor our direct control, but what is in everybody's direct control is the ability to contact their state representative or senator to ensure that this money is appropriated for the remainder of the year. And there is a different bill that has already been filed to make free lunch permanent in Massachusetts, and that would be a fantastic move as well.
Great. Can I ask a question on that? That's 2 school weeks away pretty much for us. I'm just wondering if our district has gone through and at least started that, made sure that we let parents know that so that we can get that free and reduced lunch application up, because I don't think that people have thought about that in a long time, because we have had free lunch for a couple of years.
Yeah, so in my conversations with Director Greenberg, the intention is to send out some level of notification next week. The hope is that the bill will be passed before we have to do that. So we're trying to balance the needs of notifying versus the needs of notifying too soon.
Okay. Great. Yes.
Madam Chair of the School Committee, and I'm attending a legislative meeting next Tuesday, and this is on the agenda for us to talk about as area superintendents.
Perfect. Okay.
Next up, District Treasurer, as the committee may remember, Ms. Carol Barron had provided a letter of resignation. She certainly has agreed to stay on and transition with the new person. We did conduct interviews today. We are not in a position to bring forward a recommendation today, but we will at the next available school committee meeting.
Okay. Will we need to hold a special meeting so that you can have that in a time, are you able to wait until March 1st?
I think that timing will work out okay, yes.
Okay.
If something changes, I appreciate you being proactive in mentioning that, but
Okay.
I don't think that will need that.
Okay, perfect.
And then lastly, sometimes my reports don't contain all of the good things that we try to do here. But one of the things one of the efforts that we've had this year, in addition to all of the transportation work over the summer, was engaging with Master Library for 2 software programs, a facility rental program and a work order system component program. These were partially funded by grants. The facility rental program will allow for outside groups to schedule their usage online and go through an electronic approval path. It will reduce the paper applications that we receive and streamline the process, not only for our staff and our administrators, but more importantly for the public. They'll be able to see clearly before they submit an application if something is already booked or if something is in progress. The facility, the work order system will replace a homegrown version that's been used at the 2 middle schools and the high school over the last couple of years. This work order system is a positive step forward and will, I believe, and Superintendent LaMarche, please correct me if I'm wrong, provide us at least a point towards the MSBA reimbursement. So, potentially 1 point in a many $million-dollar project is well worth the investment here. But so is the ability to track repetitive issues, repetitive problems, and trying to address them in as timely a fashion as possible, as opposed to, hey, you down the hall. Yeah, the facility rental program we expect will be online sometime in March.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you.
That's all I have.
Does anyone have any questions for?
I have a question.
Yep.
Not necessarily about the software, but because we're talking about facility rental, is there a fee associated with renting our facility? And if so, what is that fee
where does that go?
It goes into our facility rental revolving account, and the school committee has a very definitive policy on facility rentals.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, as we go on to B, it's the continued discussion for the fiscal year 2024. Superintendent LaMarche and Director Matthew will speak to this. I just want to remind the committee and anyone else that if you have something that we may have questions tonight that we need to allow our administrative team to go back and do some research on. So please bring that forward, and, we'll make a list of, I already had given a list of a couple things that I wanted. So think about that and think about what you may need for information for the upcoming budget meetings, okay?
Madam Chair and School Committee, I'll start a little bit. Mr. Matthew did provide a budget memo. As I said, we were working with our town officials all the way through today, so that's why the budget memo came out today. I'll let Mr. Matthew review that. But I wanted to go back into the presentation last week that we had and just touch upon a couple of things that I think continue to be important. Is, we are still making the assumptions that we will receive minimum Chapter 70 money. We are assuming that excess and deficiency will be stable for this next fiscal year, but will not be for FY25 if we do not have an override. And keep in mind that circulates $1 million into our operating budget. That means if it's not stable for FY25, we have to add an additional $1 million to our request in FY25 without the override. We're assuming school choice and charter assessments will be flat as well. And we're also assuming that state reimbursements will remain stable for FY24. Part of our meeting next Tuesday with legislators as well is to look for bumps in some of these reimbursements. Keep in mind that those can fluctuate from year to year. In some great years, you could have a transportation reimbursement in the 80% area. You can, in a tough year, you could have it at the 50% area. Same thing with the rest of some of the state reimbursements. That's all through and based on legislative appropriation. There's no guarantee number there. And then we know that ESSER is stable for FY24. We have to look at FY25 and prioritize ESSER. That is, every district in the state of Massachusetts is going through that same exercise. We're not alone in that particular process. Again, talking about highlights, keep in mind, and the students did a great job of capturing this, is that our request for next year for the purpose of the override is really fixed costs. It's really level services. This is the level. It's a level funded. It's a level serviced budget for us, and that's the $3.665 million. And again, the students did a fantastic job of capturing that. I think Harry really nailed it on that. But that's contractual obligations for our staff at $1.2 million. Transportation costs, which last week we presented at $400. That's where we thought we would land for next year, and we did. For the yellow bus transportation, we know that there's a $150,000 increase for our specialized transportation. So that's a total of $550,000 in transportation. Our out-of-district placement students, again, OSD, Operational Service Division, they were able to increase the tuition rates for students by 14%. And so that's a $430,000 hit to our budget. Our benefits, employee benefits and insurance, and again, other communities are dealing with these same numbers. This is not unique around employee benefits and insurance, is a $500,000 hit that really includes retirement, Worcester County retirement, and health insurance. Line items, which is basically utilities. There isn't one person, I don't believe, that can't understand the experience in the increase in the utilities within their own household, never mind 7 schools within the Dudley Charlton Regional School District. Instructional technology, that's $300,000. Keep in mind we have a number of devices that are will be coming offline next year that don't support Windows 11, which is a requirement. So the $300,000 is not to simply replace the devices on a full cost. It's to enter into a lease purchase program because that's the best we can do as a district to cycle out those devices that will not be supported by next November. And then we were looking at some movement from ESSER to restore some positions. I can't reiterate enough how we did cut a position out of the district office. We are, I don't know how to quantify it other than we are hurting within our office around state data. You have to keep in mind how important state data is for our district. That's what our foundation budget and our formulas are based off of. And we're piecemealing that together. And, you know, I think you'll hear us continue to bring to you piecemeals. You know, can we offer a part-time here or a stipend there? You know, we seem to never be in a position to dedicate a full-time person to a job within our particular office or in our district. So that's some restoration for that at a value of $150,000. The only other, before I get into the reduction, if we don't get the override, which again is 3665, keep in mind, and the students touched upon this as well, is that we've had reductions in personnel over the years. This hasn't been, we've stayed the same. We just continue to just ask for the same money for the same things. We don't do that. We've cut 16.4 positions since FY21, which coincides with my beginnings here. But again, 16.4 positions, over $1 million in reductions in staff to try to balance the budget from year to year. So this is the harder conversation. I mean, either side of this is hard. Asking for an override is certainly a very difficult question. There are people who are going to say no because financially they can't support the override. You know, and then on the flip side, we as a school district, we can't survive with what we have if we don't have an override. So it's one of those 50-50 things that is really difficult in our lives, you know, because there will be two sides to it for everybody. But without the override, the district administrative team worked extremely hard to see how we can arrive at $2.7 million in reductions. And we came up with some things. Nobody's content. Nobody is saying that, yeah, we can live without. Nobody is saying, you know, I said 7, take 4, 3 will work. We have to come up to a value because we have to balance the budget in the event that there is not an override. And so this is the best, and it's people. It's people, and then it comes into, we start touching upon some of the things that a student's experiences within that first principal's administrator's recommendation to try to get to $2.7 million. So as a review, district office, again, we're at the same time we're begging for a restoration of a position in district office. If we don't have the override, we're looking at a reduction of 3.4 FTE within the district office, which includes again, I truly feel bad for saying this all the time, but the assistant superintendent who's sitting at this table, if we don't have the override, that position is an automatic reduction in our recommendation. Shepherd Hill Regional High School, 8 full-time equivalent teachers. Again, that will change, all of this will simply change the way teaching and learning occurs within Dudley Charlton Regional School District. All of it will. Middle school, 7.0 FTEs, a full-time equivalency, teachers, educators, important people, and then middle school athletics. Again, first steps towards it. At the elementary level, 8.0 FTEs, and then the library assistants. Just a reiteration of what we've had on the reduction list for years since I've been here, is library assistants. And then in special education, as I've indicated before, that's 5 individuals. That could, again, that's what we know of even a week later, that's what we know now, but that could swap itself and we could be adding 10 people based off of our regulatory requirements to provide teaching and learning and access to our students. But right now we're looking at 5. So that's 31.4 people, individuals. And that's only getting us to $2.1 million. That's, and you know, I don't want to say that we were fighting in our room as administrators and stuff, but you have principals that are advocating for everything in their building. They don't want to give up anything in their building, nor should they. But we have to work as a team and try to come up with something that's balanced in reduction, and that is equitable in reduction, and that is the worst case scenario / best case scenario, and we're trying to reduce $2.7 million, which is almost nearly impossible in our district. The last time we did this as a group was when COVID hit. We thought our budget was going to be reduced by 20%, and so we had to come up with a reduction that was close to $5 million, and we tried and tried and tried, and the best we could get to is $3 million. Thankfully, we did not have to reduce our budget by $3 million, but many of the things we put on that list are in that $1 million that I already indicated. So these are additions to what we were trying to do through COVID, because we've been reducing since COVID and over the years. So then it leads us to what's next? What else? Because, again, the one thing about Dudley Charlton, and again, the students did a great job of sharing this, is our instructors, our staff are phenomenal. And Dudley Charlton Regional School District and the communities of Dudley and Charlton have invested in the classroom. There's no doubt about that. And, last year when I shared this, when I shared a diagram of where, the money is for Dudley Charlton, it fills a nice big circle, and then there's very little around that circle as far as areas for reduction, or areas that we could tap into to say, how do we balance the budget without impacting the classroom? And it's really impacting the classroom, and it's impacting the student experience. And these are awful. These are, as I said last week, devastating. These are, if these don't move you as an educator and as a parent, including myself as a parent, I don't know what will. These are very trying to even utter. But we're still, to balance the budget, we still need to arrive at an additional $500,000 reduction. Now, keep in mind, what we're trying to do here is we have to we have to develop two budgets. One with the override, which I explained is $3.6 million is to pay bills. And the other is, if we don't get the override, what that budget will look like. And that's why we're identifying these things, because we have to go into all of our meetings going into the spring in town meeting with those two budgets. So, again, arriving at an additional $500,000, we're looking for guidance from you as a school committee. And this evening, this was shared with you last week. This evening, I know that there'll be some questions. And as we said, these can be taken singular, these can be accommodations. So the administrative team is prepared to hear your guidance as a school committee as to what we should look at within these particular areas, because all of them are appalling to put on a list. But we need guidance to say, we can't live without, we can't live with going to half-day kindergarten. That's going 20 years back for us as a district. That will change the course of learning for those students entering kindergarten next year. I mean, we could say that for every single one of these things here, but we need some guidance from you as a school committee to come up with an additional $580,000, because as an administrative team, we don't have anywhere else we can pull from. We don't. So with that, I'll turn it over for the school committee to continue to digest that, because again, this is a heavy task. I would respectfully like to turn over to Mr. Matthew to go over his memo that he shared today. That I say we when it comes to Mr. Matthew and I. Yes, I attend all the meetings, but I can't compliment Mr. Matthew, his knowledge, his understanding of both district financing, municipality financing. His articulation of the thoughts and the thinking and the facts in the processes, and with all of this work, with a failed override or with a positive override, we should all, as a district, identify that we should be indebted to Mr. Matthew for his tremendous amount of lift and work on all of this for us as a district. So
Before we move on, can I ask one question? Because I think you're going to start talking about the override, correct? What your budget memo entertains. And I think that conversation, this conversation it's going to be a very large conversation if we do both at one time.
Well, respectfully, I wasn't asking you, I was asking you to continue to digest it.
Okay.
And think about it while Mr. Matthew talks about the override. But if you prefer
I'm
to.
just wondering if we have certain needs that people have for information and data or think about the needs that you might have, so that after our conversation, we can get back to it and think about what you would need for the next meeting, okay? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you, Superintendent LaMarche. I'm not going to read the entire budget. The budget memo, the school committee received it earlier, and I'm sure it's a document that will be gone over more than once or twice by you as we prepare for the upcoming few weeks. But in essence, as we've heard from the Abrams Group in two different presentations, the district is a hold harmless district, meaning that we can't expect a huge influx of Chapter 70 money. So as a result, any of our increases budgetarily are going to come from the communities. And quite frankly, even though they may not be in exactly the same place, I don't believe that either community is ready or prepared for a 6 or 7% budgetary increase for the region. And it's particularly challenging to swallow that level of expense when, as pointed out earlier, there are new programs. This is simply to open the doors, keep the lights on, and keep services to the same level that they're currently at. But that's the reality that we're facing for FY24. Prior to the meeting, I did pass out a simple spreadsheet that has been going around on the listserv for the school business officials. It lists about 50-odd communities and their budget increases or potential budget increases that they're looking at for FY24. And while 6 or 7% is essentially unheard of in Dudley Charlton, that is indeed the average of these 58 communities. That doesn't represent every community and every school district, but it's a fair representation that we're not alone in this challenge. Both communities are in different places as we approach the FY24 and future budgets. The town of Charlton has certainly seen an increase in commercial activities, and you can see that in their levy limits and new growth, amounting to actually over $3.5 million over the past couple of years. That is a substantial increase for them, and as the development along Route 20 with ease of access to Route 84 and the Mass Pike, I would expect that they would continue to see growth like that. But even so, the potential $1.9 million increase to their assessment is significantly higher than anticipated, and probably and likely, and I'll sit here and say most assuredly, not the number that they had originally projected for our FY24 budget increase. We'll continue to work with the town, including at the Finance Committee meeting next week. That $1.9 million assessment increase does not include the money needed for a feasibility study, $537,000, based on last Monday's vote of setting the feasibility study at $1 million. Any increase in Charlton is, of course, predicated on Dudley's ability to support its share as well. The town of Dudley has not experienced similar increase in new growth as Charlton over the past few years. Without an override or some other new source of revenue, and I don't think there's a white knight coming down the road for that, Dudley's going to struggle to provide the needed town services and the same level of support for our assessments as they did in FY23. They used $280,000 in non-recurring revenue to support our middle-level budget request last year. This limited budget scenario is not new to the district. I watch Groundhog Day every day in anticipation of budget season because I know exactly what it's going to bring. But the target for the district assessment increase has always been at that 2.5% level. And just as a reminder to school committee, I'm sure you've heard it before, but for the people in the audience, that translates to about a 1.25% increase to the district's annual budget. That's difficult in most years, and why when there's an open position through retirement or resignation that we sometimes don't fill those. I believe one of the students mentioned inadequately resourced district, and that's true. And in Mr. Abrams' report, he talked about the fact that the district is 12% over required school spending, and that's fantastic. That's growth for the district over the past few years, especially compared to the previous time. But the statewide average is 28%. That percentage difference to Dudley Charlton is $7 million. It's not because Dudley and Charlton don't want to support us at that level. They simply have not had that financial capability. But I ask everybody to think about what this district could be with $7 million more in its operating budget. To talk a little bit about the override, I think we've narrowed down to two plans, and even in our continued discussions today, it seems like, well, let me talk about Plan A first. An override to provide 1 year of sufficient funding for FY24. That would be $3.6 million for the town and district. It puts the district back looking for additional funding from Dudley in FY25. Again, Groundhog Day, because we do that each and every year as part of the budget process. It does not provide monies to pay down the capital projects approved in September of 2022, specifically the middle school roofs. It does not include the assessment for the feasibility study that Dudley would have to find through other means for $163,000. Adding that into the override would increase the request to $4,063,000. I think the preferable course, as I understood it from the town appointed officials today, would be not to look at a one-year solution there, but perhaps to look for a two-year solution, which would be a total of $4,350,000. And that would provide the district a sustainable assessment increase for FY25. Plan B, I think, is the preferred course for everybody. But again, that's still to be determined with the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee. An override of $5.5 million would provide sufficient funding for FY24 and future years. It would address the annual budget assessment for Dudley. It would cover the costs of the MSBA feasibility study. It would pay $1.4 million towards Dudley's share of the capital projects debt incurred in September of 2022. The approach has a fixed tax bill, which would show an increase in FY24 and only the standard 2.5% increases in years 2 through 5. The plan would be to create a specific stabilization account for the Dudley Charlton Regional School District annual assessment. Appropriations would go into that account in years 2 and 3 and taken out in years 4 and 5 based on the assumed 2/3 approval vote at annual town meeting. It would provide a very specific multi-year plan. There would be no volatility in approach. And while it is absolutely a substantial increase, it's the lowest amount which provides adequate multi-year funding solutions for the district while also paying down the capital debt, or a portion of the capital debt incurred in 2022. Again, we saw the Abrams presentation multiple times. The facts didn't change between December and February 1st. It's clear that the region has made some improvements in the financial statistics over the last couple of years, but we're very far behind the norms of the rest of the state. I already talked about the fact that it's a $7 million value for the difference of the statewide amount over required school spending and where we're at. Dudley Charlton is special, and our staff truly have a special sauce in doing more with less, and they've had a lot of practice at it. But the reality for everybody is that $1 is the same in Dudley Charlton as it is for every other entity in the state. Just because we're in Dudley Charlton doesn't mean something costs 60 cents, 70 cents, 80 cents on the dollar. And most especially this year, the district needs significant financial support. While a 6 to 7% budget increase for the district is rare, it's not rare across our state this year. Ultimately, statistics and facts help boost an argument and provide a rationale for why an override in Dudley is needed. But the increased costs do not provide level services. But the increased costs provide level services providing only level services is the real budget driver in FY24. The potential increases in the tax levy is desperately needed, but will remain a challenging discussion with the taxpayers in Dudley. Dudley has a much lower ability to tax its citizens than many other communities is a fact, but one built up over a number of years. The coming weeks will determine what the Dudley Charlton Regional School looks like for years to come. You can thank me for my positive sunshine approach to the budget for this year, please.
Thank you. Okay, so, do you have anything you would like from the school committee on your budget memo?
Any feedback is obviously always welcome and accepted. In terms of the, planning out what the override is going to look like, that will be one of the important aspects of meeting with the Board of Selectmen and FinCom, both at the end of this month and in March. It is quite possible that, through continued conversations, we will narrow down to one very specific plan, and that the hope is that it's something that provides a solution for multiple years, even more than 2.
I have a question for you. I was surprised that that there was a possibility of paying off the roofs in 1 year. I thought that typically capital goes into like a debt service. So I think that's what we touted last time.
So the roofs have not yet been voted as a debt exclusion. At the end of this fiscal year, we will do a bond anticipation note
Okay.
to help cover the expenses that are incurred, through this fiscal year and through the summer. And then next year, we will go out and do that bond permanently. Charlton has discussed the possibility of using some of its available funds to pay down its portion. In Dudley, what we're doing, because we need an amount of the override that's going to last for multiple years, we're front-loading that payment and making it as an operational expense as opposed to a debt exclusion, or at least half of it at the $5.5 million plan, so that our bond will not need to be, the full value, but minus 1.4 million. And that 1.4 million will continue on in future years and provide our annual assessment funding. So it's simply a mechanism to get the funding that we need for multiple years.
Okay. Okay, does anyone else have any questions? On that? No. It's a lot to digest, and we did just get it today, so I think that, as we look at more, I would just say to the committee, the more meetings we can go to, the better, and we probably should kind of make sure that at least one of us is at every meeting, if that is okay. All right, so going back to our priorities as far as the recommendations that the administrative team would like us to provide them with, do we have any thoughts or comments on those, or do you need any more information for that? I can start with the information that I would need. Okay, so going back to some of these requests. So on the initial cuts that we need to make, if we cannot pass the budget, I would like to know, it's one thing to say we're having 8 cuts at Shepherd Hill. I want to know the impact, like, where are the 8 cuts being made? What programs are being impacted?
Everything. I don't know how I think it would be,
Well-
I think it would be unreasonable to be that granular and very specific as to, but it's the high school principal's going to work on with his department heads on where those 8 cuts will occur, and part of that is tied into scheduling and course selections, and it's premature to say that. I mean, the common sense would say 8 positions, 1 from each department, and we're done, but that's too easy to say that, so.
Right.
So the students did a great job of saying it'll impact AP, it'll impact course selections, it'll impact, and as I presented last Wednesday, what it does is it brings us to what we're required to do, how to be a compliant district without the extra things. So I'm not sure, I mean, yeah, we'll try to come up with more information, but I'm not sure exactly
I guess I
what
just don't
detail you're
know,
looking for.
where did you get the number 8 from?
We need to get to $2.1 million.
Right, like
So he could say 7, and then elementary would have to say 9.
Correct. I just, and I'm not trying to pit one school against the other, I just don't understand, where did the number come from? Is there, were you thinking like, okay, we're going to offer, we're gonna combine these areas, or we're not gonna offer this? Like, I'd like to know what the impact is, because that's part of the story that we're gonna need to talk about to our constituents.
Yeah, we'll work on it, but again, it's going to be a tough, very specific detail to identify that we're not going to run Steve Lamash's washing machine repair class. I'm just trying to make something up, so, because of this. It's just not, because it's course selection, students have to select things.
Well,
They have to go through a whole
that's the
scheduling
thing.
process.
Our-
We offer a plethora of choices. There's.
Right, and I guess that's my question. Are you at the point where we are saying, like, is course selection is coming up, March for you guys? About
Yes.
that? Okay, so
Yep.
kind of, like,
But keep in mind, we're planning for 2 budgets. So
Okay.
we can't limit our course selection going for the $2.7 million reduction, because then we're cutting off our nose for if we get an override.
Right.
And then we're trying to build everything back out of the year. You know,
Right.
and then having to go back out and do course selection all over again and all that. So we have to enter this as if we're going to have a $3.6 million override, and then how we identify how we're going to arrive at the reductions from there. It's the opposite thinking.
Yes, and I'm not trying to be adversarial about it.
I'm not trying to be adversarial in
Okay.
return, I'm just trying to say how I know what you're asking for. You want people to know that, again, Steve LaMarche's Tiki Hut class is not gonna run next year, so therefore it impacts me, therefore I'm more willing to participate. That's
Right.
going to be very difficult to get to that granular position.
We will have people in our towns that will say, and that have said, that they feel that there's a lot of room to give in our budget. I know there's not, but we will have people that will say that. And we need to be able to tell them exactly, where is it coming from? How did you pick 8? Why did we pick 8 there? Like,
Right.
what was the rationale behind it?
So we'll work on that, but I just want to caution you that it's going to be still a relative level of generalization. You know, again, we can all sit here and say it's going to be one from every department. But that's not,
Right.
it's not that easy. And
Right.
so we will have to give more generalization around that, but it's never going to be to who it is or what class can't be run because of it at this level, at this point.
Okay.
Okay? But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Mr. Principal Elwell has a better sense of all that. But we will work on it for you. The message is clear. You're gonna want that for all these, I get that.
Yeah. Last year we came in and started saying, like, we're not gonna have any middle school foreign language. And that was a huge uproar, and, but at least we quantified it.
Right, but that was one thing.
Right, and that was one thing. Right, so like that's,
Foreign language and librarian, those were the two things.
right,
We didn't say 8 teachers at Shepherd Hill,
I
7
know.
teachers. But if you recall, when I presented last week too, I talked about that a lot of the stuff as we move towards more of a compliant district or a regulatory district, that we're only doing what we need to do. It really impacts a lot of the tier 2 stuff that we're looking at. And that's the tier 2 stuff is in the multi-tiered system of support. And that's from the classroom to the tier 3 to the actually specialized instruction, specialized service. Those services are really buried in all of this. But we will, the point is great, and I'm sure other school committee members in the community wants it as well. We will work on trying to bring this down to more detail so it's better understood.
okay.
Okay? But I just want to talk to you on the very specific detail, that's all.
Okay. Go
I
ahead.
just want to ask a question is it based on seniority as well? The teachers have a contract, so there's a seniority list, there's people who have tenure in the school.
Oh, without question.
Right, so is it the bottom 8 up, basically?
It's not that easy, that's what, I'm trying to explain it.
Okay. Well, it is a question, though, it is
Yeah.
by seniority, and obviously,
Right.
if
Seniority
that,
is
they're all
a
in
pro-
one department, like,
The collective bargaining agreement has a RIF clause in it that you have to follow through.
Yeah.
So it's not only seniority, it's licensure as well. So it's all, and that's a multi-day exercise to try to go through and see how that occurs.
yes.
Yep. And that typically doesn't happen until we approve a budget, or we know exactly what we're gonna do with the budget.
Mr.
So I think it's important for everybody in the room to know, the students to know, when you came in tonight, none of us are comfortable with this. None of us feel like this is an okay way for us to go. We are just as concerned as you are that we need this override. So please know that. Thank you for coming in. Come again. I also think it's important to note that the reductions for the middle school, say 7 FTE, and my understanding is that's total across both middle schools, not 7 at each.
Correct.
And the elementary school encompasses 4 schools when it's 8.
Correct.
And I'm trying to figure out, how is that equally divided if we're talking about making this equitable? Is it 2 at each elementary school? Is it, how do you split 7 between 2 schools? I mean, I'm trying to follow that along too.
I looked at that, I'm sorry, I may get it wrong, but I looked at that as not really equitable on that of 2 from here, 2 from there, but where the student needs population is.
Okay.
And where they're going from. I mean, I look at this and for me, with Mr. LaMarche talking about MTSS, that's where I find difficulty with this. I mean, it's all difficult, and we know we have to nitpick on this and get it to that, so we have a balanced level budget if the override doesn't pass. But I look at it where COVID is still alive in our schools. We're still dealing with social emotional, we're still dealing with a lot of regression, you know, and yes, ESSER's there, but 3 years is definitely not gonna cut it from what happened with the students for COVID. And for me, targeting through and having it where you're 1 in 3, you're missing that catch, that safety net for so many of the students that really need it. And when I look at that, that's what really hurts for me, is just the amount of students that aren't going to have that support.
Again, we will work as administrative team to come in with more detail. It may not be granular, but we will come in with representations as to what the impact is from our recommendations.
I have one more, if you don't mind. I'm gonna actually ask, if we see this presentation again, would you mind numbering the pages just so that I can tell you what page I'm referring to? That would be helpful. I'm sorry that I didn't notice it last time to say it to you. So the page that talks about,
The override?
no, I'm on the page before that. Sorry, what the administrative team already put forth as possibilities for cuts if we don't pass the override.
Page 19, by the way, Jane.
Thank you. And so, I've been asked what middle school athletics means, and does that include anything outside of athletics for activities for students? And is it something that parents could pay into so that the athletics would be able to stay and/or show choir and band and play and things like that? So is that something that would be immediately cut, or is that, is there other options there?
No, through the chair, that's a great question. Right now, as it is listed, that is middle school athletics only, that's as a whole. We could certainly look at a fee-based athletic program like we have at the high school. Just from experience and working with athletic director Scanlon, that does even fee-based, that's not enough to support the entire program. It's an offset. It wouldn't be dollar for dollar. So, but we could certainly, I wrote that down as a question for us to explore and look at and try to provide that schematic for you at the March 1st meeting.
I think we also want to remember too that not everybody has that ability to pay. So when we talk
Understood.
about paying for things, like in parents paying, not every parent has that luxury.
We do have student supports. We have the Be Better Fund through John Pierre, and we do have
Sure.
ways that things could be paid for and are paid for in our district. But
Sure.
Parents have brought this to me. This
Yeah,
was
no.
presented last week, and people want to know.
Right.
Great question.
I think what might be good is to actually get what the breakdown would be for the student, for one student, and like what the full amount is that actually it does cost, and break it down, the average fee per, because I think if you really think about how much of like what is it for Shepherd Hill, like the $150 fee, 200, I can't remember off the top of my head, I'm sorry. Last time I paid it was October. I'm like,
115 is a family cap on it.
all right, but I think people are missing where that is just an offset fee versus how much it really does cost for the program and for that one individual person to be in that program.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it all just goes back to what the student said, that this is how you create a well-rounded student and student experience. And so maybe it's not music, maybe it's not sports for your interest, but there's something that each child is driven for. And if we take those away, what experience are we leaving for the children?
Through the chair,
Yes.
I absolutely agree, and again, it's something we'll certainly schematic out for you. Just keep in mind, though, if you, even with an offset, the value of that goes back into requiring another reduction somewhere. So just, if we say we want middle school athletics and it's 50% can be offset by charging fees, the remaining 50% still has to try to help us reach towards $2.7 million balanced budget. So it has to come out of somewhere else.
I'm gonna say another thing, sorry. If we start taking these programs and experiences away from students, our enrollment will continue to go down, and our funding from the state will continue to go down, and our home values will go down. So this is a direct impact whether you have a student in this district or you don't, because this is going to directly impact every single citizen in both of these communities.
That's great. A couple more data points
Yep.
that I think would be important to me. You know, when we look at the school committee guidance, that page on the FY, on that one.
Page 20.
Page 20 now, yes.
Sorry. Thank you, Jean.
Nope, that's okay. So,
I think I'm the only one who downloaded the PDF, so I have the numbers.
it's okay. So, some of the largest pockets are the increasing class size from 24 to 27. And just to clarify, that was in K to 4? Is that what you're
Again,
talking about?
It's hard not to say that with the principal's recommendation at the top of 8
Right.
Shepherd Hills staff members, and now 16 full-time across the board somewhere else for class size, every class size is impacted. It's not.
Right.
Right, so 16 is district-wide going for, for high school and sometimes middle school, you look more at an average versus the actual class size. But that's, again, it may need to be more than 16, it may be less than 16, but we tried to identify a number and a value for, to present to you as a school committee for your guidance.
Okay. So the interscholastic athletics of 420,000, could we tier that out? And again, we don't want to lose anything, right? Can we tier it out on varsity, JV? Do you have freshman teams?
Yes,
Okay, like,
yes, we can do all
okay,
that. Yep.
thank you.
Yep.
Yeah,
We'll tear out athletics from middle school through, so
Okay.
there's a clear understanding, because it's basically one program.
okay. And just to be clear, the middle school athletics that we're talking about are the ones that are run purely for middle school students. It's not the students that are our 8th grade students that are now at Shepherd Hill playing at
Right,
the
those-
varsity level.
Those are Shepherd Hill interscholastic athletics.
Okay. Okay. It's really quiet out there. Yes, go ahead. You go.
I guess a couple things too, just it is kind of vague. It is hard to kind of really quantify what this and how many, who is impacted. You know, like how many students do participate in the sports program, the music program, and the other club and programs that aren't sports or music related, because there's a huge population of students that participate, you know, the GSA, you know, like all these other groups that are a huge support for so many students that are not mentioned. You know, music and in sports is always usually, you know, the attention grabber, but there's a lot of other programs that I assume will fall into some of these categories that will be eliminated. You know, so how many students are actually going to be impacted? All of them will, but, you know.
So it's a great question. In this chart, we did separate out all of the non-athletic and music activities, like GSA or any of those groups, and that's the value of 92,659.
Okay, so.
Okay, but it's a
That's
great
fine.
question about how many students participate, but again, it's tough to, and you were doing it, it's tough to value GSA versus, you know, freshman basketball. How are you ever going
Yeah.
to correlate
Yeah.
that? You're not. I can tell you both between music and athletics, I mean, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of kids, so, but we will come up with an actual number of participation for you, so people understand what the impact would be for those particular items.
And then, if I can ask another question? And then also with the eliminating department heads, what does a department head necessarily take on or do? Do they have like less classroom time to do something else to organize the department? I don't, you know, what does that necessarily
Yeah,
mean?
the department heads would, right now they have a period that they are able to be the department head. It's a non-instructional time. That would be added back as an instructional class for that, which is why there's an additional possible reduction of another staff member with that. And most of the work of the department heads would fall on the building administrators,
Okay.
if that was exercised.
Right, like, and you have to think like your department heads are your curriculum experts.
Sure.
So those are the people that are doing coaching for the teachers and the faculty, and also like really keeping up to date on the curriculum for their area. So
Yeah.
quite an important.
Another big loss if that
Yeah,
would happen.
there isn't anything on this list that is,
Yeah.
you know, there's nothing, again, as administrators, we worked extremely hard on all of this.
I know, well, you can, obviously, it hurts, no matter what way you spell it. There's,
And as Mr. Matthews said, and I'll say, we'll take any ideas that people have beyond
Yep.
this.
Jean?
So my question is do we have to start picking these out now for what we are thinking? Is that what this discussion is supposed to be for the guidance of that $580,000? Do we have to do that tonight? Or is that for the next school committee meeting that we would have to have that finalized?
So, through the chair, I think the goal was to prepare for the budget workshop, March 1st, and to have this open, rich dialogue about this. And if there were questions for more information, which I'm building a list of that, so that we can provide that to you as a committee, to arrive at your final recommendation or guidance to us as a administrative team to present you a budget that you're going to pass. That would be a balanced budget if there was a failed override. And I think the only other caveat I would put on here is there anything on this list that you as a committee identify? I mean, they're all non-negotiable, we can't touch that, untouchable. Is there anything that, you know, through consensus, that you would as a committee say, you were definitely not going to, I'm gonna go back to Steve Lamash's Tiki Hut class, you're not going to cut that, so.
I can give it one.
I did one too.
Go ahead, Ginny.
Half-day kindergarten.
Half-day kindergarten.
and to piggyback off that, the kindergarten assistants, those classrooms need
Oh, that's what you're thinking.
they need that support.
Mine's special education.
Where are we?
On this list.
Oh, this
I
list.
know,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was there.
But the kindergarten assistants can help identify students that might require special education, so having them as a second set of eyes, you know, that will,
Is there consensus as a committee?
they do
just,
it.
I hope you don't mind me asking,
No, I don't know.
if there's
Do you-
consensus on kindergarten.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest
That would be good.
concerns too. I did have a question though, it sounds like we wouldn't go that way, but I know kindergarten is not required by the state, and I know that some districts do require, payment from parents. And I didn't know if it was possible for, it wouldn't cover the full amount, but to offset that budget, like payment requirement for it.
Madam Chair, it's a great question. I just want to clarify it a little bit. Full-day kindergarten is not required by the state.
Okay.
So with half-day kindergarten, but once again, yes, we could schematic that out to say, this is what a fee, which wouldn't cover the entire cost of kindergarten, and then we as a group, us recommending your guidance, would have to identify that value as another reduction somewhere else.
Whichever. Yep. Go ahead.
My other second hard stop, if I can have two or more, is sports. Middle school and high school. High school especially. Might be setting some of these kids up to have a future, to go to college. They might not have an opportunity to go to college. Otherwise, if they have a great, you know, they're an amazing athlete and they have an opportunity to go to school, and they won't have that opportunity more if they, you know, didn't get a scholarship. I don't know. And it goes beyond that, but it'd be detrimental to many.
I wasn't gonna say this, but I'm gonna add to that. I think those are the individuals that will not come to our school.
Agreed.
Those are the individuals that will seek a different school setting and drive our numbers down for enrollment. Thank you. So, my hard stop is half-day kindergarten, but I think there's nothing on here that I'm okay with.
Yeah, no.
But as more information gathering, this is really hard to do. So maybe something that would help us to try to look at this objectively, which I think COVID taught me, where we were 7 individual people looking through our own lens and maybe the lens of our close friends or family, but we are an entire district, so we need to take everybody's lens into effect. What if we looked at direct student impact to each thing that you put on here? And could you try to put a value to how many students would be impacted if you did any of these different things. Maybe that's far too heavy a task, but it would at least help us see 10 students are impacted versus 400 students are impacted.
I wonder how you would ever equate that, though. Like, the one student that's impacted because they were allowed to be in a club that didn't have them drop out of school, that now they actually have a future to have a higher income. Like, how do you equate that? It's so hard.
It's a very fair sentence. I'm just looking at this saying this
Right.
is impossible. So.
Originally, we had talked, or at least I had talked about, part of our, if we go back to our school committee goals for the year, it was really to get input from our communities, right? And I think you're right. Sometimes we talk to the people around us. We need to talk to everybody. We need to talk to our students, our staff, our community members. So how do we get that? How do we get their guidance in this kind of thing? I almost wonder, do we send out some type of survey and ask them to equate how would they rank order this? I don't know. I'm looking for people's information, what their thoughts are on that.
I think it would
Yeah.
certainly be helpful to get the parents, guidance, because again, that might be something that keeps them in the district if they say what is passionate to them. Otherwise, if we do lose something, and it does go directly back to home values and everything else and enrollment, it's a whole circle. It's a whole circle. It all plays into one other, group. I think having a parent's opinion about this is important. If we can do it in a way that's, won't get out of control, which I don't know how that would be, but.
But then that brings us back to the conversation and the point you just made, that there may be one student and one family, or 10 students and 10 families that are heavily impacted by these cuts, and where we have a great and very robust music program, and so we have a lot of parents and students that would maybe weigh in one way related to that, and we would miss the students' perspective that you just raised.
Right, but I'm at least saying, we have all our students here sitting in front of us.
Some of them, yeah.
And I don't know another time where we've had all these students that have come to a meeting. I feel like we owe it to them, we owe it to our middle school kids to ask what their opinions are. What do they feel? I think that's important. And ask our community members, because I think the more information we have, the better we will be. Probably more confused we're gonna be as well, but the better we'll have it.
Maybe it'll be a tool to educate the public about how serious these
And
impacts
that
are.
as well. So,
I just want to caution you on the messaging that would wrap around that, because there are ethics and stuff around the proposition 2.5 override. So it wouldn't be a get out and vote message, it would be, it would have to be a very simple survey.
Okay, do you, we would probably have to pass that through the Ethics Commission?
Yeah, I'd definitely have to make a call.
Absolutely.
If the goal of the committee is to get a survey out for rank ordering reductions in the event that there's an override, I would have to get approval through
Okay.
campaign finance, and maybe touch upon ethics.
Okay.
This is out there publicly, sorry, through the chair.
Okay.
This is out there publicly, and so members of the public have the ability to reach out to any of the 7 of us, or our administration, or the principals in the buildings that they're served by, and provide feedback. So there is an avenue of information that could be gathered.
Right, I think we just, as Superintendent LaMarche says, we do have to be very careful about what we do to message that, so that.
Madam Chair, if I could, keep in mind that a override vote is for all constituents in the community. We only have a captured group if we communicate anything out from our office to our families. And that's where the violation would be. So, again, how you would do that, it would need some technical support on that. yes, anyone can access this, any voter can access this, because it's part of our meeting and we presented it. But actually putting out a survey with some message around the override we'd be doing it to a captured audience, and that would be, from my experience, that would be the violation. Because a vote is for the entire community, not just for school parents.
But what we're asking, sorry, Caitlin, what we're asking on is what reduction is the most palatable to you? Not go out and vote.
Is it an option to put the survey and a link on the website, and therefore it's not sent to everyone, but anyone that wants to access it can access it and vote that way?
There's still messaging around that.
Okay.
So again, I'm just, respectfully, I'd have to run this through campaign finance and ethics. That's state campaign finance and state ethics, not, there isn't somebody sitting in our office who does that, just to be clear.
I have a question about this again.
The worst thing I ever did, put screen time on.
I know, that's what I've been getting hit with too.
The eliminate department heads, it seems to say only at Shepherd Hill Regional High School. Is that all department heads would be proposed to be eliminated? Or is that
The way
reduction?
it's valued in this, yes.
This is all.
Yep. But again, we could schematic that out, but again, if that's, I mean, we still haven't really identified, which we're not doing tonight, but we still have to identify how we're gonna get to 580. And if we schematic out some of the things in the principal's recommendations, we have to add that into increase to the 580 for an additional reduction. So we can schematic out department heads in a different way, but there's still a balance of work that would fall on the principals and assistant principals in the district.
I was just on page 20, which was the proposed possibilities to get to the 580.
Yep.
And I was just trying to understand if that would eliminate all of our department heads, or if that would eliminate a portion of them.
Yep,
I wasn't necessarily saying let's do it, I was just saying,
as listed, that's all of them.
okay.
Oh, Olivia, sorry, thank you.
Hey, okay, so, like, I was thinking when, like, everyone was speaking, like, especially with the survey thing, like, I'm in an AP stats class, and we've done surveys and talked about surveys. Like, especially with there being so many kids in the music program, you have to worry about, first off, if you did post it on, like, the website, response bias, because people are going to answer. It's not like, because it's a census. And then, like, the amount of music kids, because there's a lot of us, that we would totally flood it and outweigh the voices of these other programs. And I don't feel like that's fair, even if, like, our head is on the chopping board. Like, is that really fair for everyone else's head to be on the chopping board too?
Madam Chair, Olivia makes a good point, because a link on a website wouldn't capture that you live in Dudley. So
That is true.
you could have all these show choir alumni, which we're talking about a much bigger number.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot
could
of
all
them.
take the survey as well and rank order it too.
Right, okay.
So the difficulty is trying to message out to our community and to our captured audience of voters. That's where the violations come in.
Well, I think that having our community forum is a good first step, a good step at least. And, you know,
It's going to be close to a final step, but yes.
yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So as I've been taking notes here of the things that the school committee hopes are off limits on that page of school committee guidance, really all that's left is increased class size. We've eliminated half-day K. The Shepherd Hill and middle school activity stipends is still on the table. The kindergarten assistance was listed as a no-go.
Right.
Department heads are one of the
Yeah, I think
things.
that's like one or two people, like, so, I mean, I think that,
Sure, but I'm saying, you already this list has
Right.
been narrowed down to only a couple of items, through that conversation, whether it's one person or all seven of you, ultimately, that, wish it, but things that were not mentioned, I'm saying, are those.
oh, I just don't think people got to them yet.
They're all untenable.
Yep, they are. Okay. Is there anyone, from our audience here tonight that has any, do you have any ideas for information that would help us as well, that we can be looking at? It's okay. Just figured I'd ask. Okay. All right.
Madam Chair, I can assure you
Yes.
that they're taking all of this in, though,
They are.
based off of their presentations this evening.
Good.
This
They
is the
are.
best civics class you ever had.
I did not expect to do that much money. Like, I came in here knowing that, like, we were gonna discuss budget cuts. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's more than I have in my bank account.
Okay. All right, well, why don't we move on to the school year 23-24 calendar?
Madam Chair and School Committee, in your folder, you have the 2023-2024 school calendar proposal for action this evening. We worked on this as a subcommittee. We worked on it as a principals group. We've had lots of people review it, and I am unhappy to say that there's still an error in it. So if you go down on the bottom left-hand side, in one of the keys, it says class of 2023 commencement. That should be 2024 commencement. So I will take full ownership of that error that's still in the calendar. This calendar is, everyone see it?
Oh, I'm sorry.
This calendar is representative of basically a similar calendar from year to year. There are a couple of nuances in here to share with you. One is that it is a leap year, so we have an extra day in February, just so if people were counting, they could see that. But the last 2 years, because of COVID, actually 3 years, if you count the 9 days we used because of COVID, we started the year with a teacher orientation, new year, and then some PD time. This proposal is to jump right back into school on the 29th of August for our students. With that being said, there is a recommendation to have a half day of school on the Friday before Labor Day. With this past year, we had a full day. The year before, we had no school. The recommendation was to come in with a half day on Labor Day, an early release for all. Then building in, going on from there, to September contractually, we have September 22nd is early release day for all students and educated PD. That's a contractual day. Then moving into October, we have the full day of in-service on the 6th. That's been somewhat traditional as a district, the Friday before Columbus Day, to have a full in-service day. And then moving on to the 26th, the 26th and November 16th would be represented by flipping the half days as we did this year, meaning on October 26th, you would have early release for all students, but there would be parent conferences for 5 through 12 plus, and therefore the pre-K through grade 4 staff members would be ALICE trained again, continuation of refresher for ALICE training. And then the same thing would happen on the 16th for the opposite grade levels. We would continue that. That model seemed to work extremely well, especially checking in with our ALICE trainers. We have to recognize Veterans Day on the 10th of November. The parent-teacher conference is on the 16th. Then we go into our traditional Thanksgiving break. We do the same thing for our winter holiday break. And we return basically the winter holiday break is the same as it was this year. Then we were looking at January 12th as a full day of in-service day. This will be the first time that we've moved one to after the winter holiday break, which is mid-year, which is a great time for our staff to have a full in-service day to reflect on practices to that point and then prepare for the remainder of the school year. In February, we moved this past year and the past couple of years, we've had split secondary parent-teacher conferences. We moved that to be a single day for grades 5 through 12 plus. Just so everyone knows, there's another typo there. On the right-hand side, it says March 7th, but it should be March 8th. And then Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I was in February, March. They're supposed to replicate each other, but they didn't. Sorry. Then you have March 7th, which is the early release parent conferences for 5 through 12 plus. That's where we combine them. They used to be twice in March, 2 days in March. The Tuesday was for middle school and the Thursday was for high school. We're combining it to one day. The 8th has been traditionally pre-K through 4. March 29th is an early release day for all. That is, in parentheses, it is Good Friday. I know there was a lot of dialogue last year on that. Then we have a early release day on Friday, the 24th of May. That is not for all, that's for all students. That gives staff a chance to work on, reflecting on the year and preparing for the end of the school year and preparing for the next school year. We have commencement on June 2nd, which seems extremely early. And then if there are no weather-related days, the last day of school would be Monday, June 10th. If there are, by law, we have to schedule 185 days, so that brings us to June 17th for the school year. So this is the recommendation with that one edit moving forward for the committee to consider.
Okay. I would take a motion to approve the 23-24 school calendar.
Can we make a motion to that one edit?
Yeah, with the one.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Who moved? And who second?
Second.
Okay. Open for discussion? I have some discussion points that got brought to me. I guess I have a real concern with putting Alice training, like refresher, in October and November, where I don't mind having the second day, the 29th of August, be a PD day for the staff, like having staff all refreshed in Alice before you open the school buildings, so that they can go in and we can then go right into training our kids. And there's no questions, especially if you have new staff. Because what if, God forbid something happened between that and October. And you could do any other kind of trainings that you may have to give, whether it's medical trainings or anything else. That was one. And then, things that I've heard from parents is that we have 8 half days in the schedule, which is 4 full school days that kids are not it's equating to 4 full school days, and that's concerning to me and to other parents. And every single half day or PD day is before a long weekend, which for some parents, that is difficult to arrange for coverage, arrange for care. Some people don't get that long weekend off. They don't get the Monday off. So now we're asking them to take time off on Friday, time off on Monday. So, good.
Just to your last point, I've heard the opposite of that. I've heard people really upset if when we did take out the Friday before Labor Day last year when we had a full day, there were a lot of parents that were not okay with that. They had already made their plans knowing this was the way that our calendar typically falls out. So I just have heard different than that.
Anyone else? Yeah.
I've heard that a lot of people were upset by the Friday, so looking at this, I'm sure that they'll be happy to have that Friday at least be a half day, for travel purposes if they're going away that weekend, so.
And just understand what you were mentioning about the professional development. So delaying the start of school to the 30th and having the 29th so the 28th is a prep educator orientation, and then the 29th be a professional development day, and then the start of school the 30th. Is that what you were talking about?
That's what we did last year. I thought it worked pretty well.
Again, we have a subcommittee that worked on this.
Right.
And that includes the associations. And our staff, in our feedback that we received, is people do not like that full day before students come back. They're motivated and energized by coming back to school and all that, and they like to just jump right in and welcome their students back with the biggest smile that they have from their summer refresher. See, I'm always thinking about refreshments. So that's what I've heard. Maybe I misheard it, and there are other people who were there here.
Now that you've said that, Ms. LaMarche, I actually have heard that the training that occurred this year, and I'm sorry that I don't remember what it was. UDL did not lead people into being able to get into their classrooms and be ready for their first day. And so I guess I support that. But to Kathy's point, ALICE training is specific to the safety of our students. And so I can also appreciate if we're working on safety with our students the first weeks of school, it makes sense to have the safety training in place before the teachers come in.
Well, through the chair, keep in mind, for the overwhelming, if not 90% of our staff, it's a refresher. It's not new.
Okay.
For them. Yes, I certainly understand and hear Mrs. Carignani on new staff, but we do have new staff orientation the week before that we could certainly give them a idea of what ALICE protocols are from that point, which is the whole goal is to roll out ALICE protocols next year for lockdown procedures as well, which would be part of the 28th orientation for all staff on that. But again, it's a refresher. It's not new for our overwhelming staff who've been through it this year.
So when will our students be trained in ALICE?
Again, as we've talked, we don't have that next step because it's a 50-50 thing, whether students get trained in it or the adult who's in charge is the person trained in it. So we talked about different levels of that, so we are thinking maybe high school students receive some information on ALICE training and what the steps are as we go through it's not necessarily training, it's an actual act. This is the protocol and working on that, which is going to happen. Again, we have procedures in place already for a lockdown or for an active shooter, but there is thought that we wouldn't be training elementary students or middle school students because the adult in charge is the person directing what is required. But we're still working with our ALICE trainers, and that's why in my report this evening we talked about we're identifying next steps.
Okay.
And again, this was also run through the administrative team as well. And they do have the same concerns about student safety.
Have we met 990, looking at the fact that we also, may give half days for exam periods, things like that, with this schedule?
As designed, yeah.
Okay. I do think we should take out the words Good Friday. I don't know if anyone has a thought about that. Like, I'm wondering why
It's a carryover for calendar year to calendar year.
right.
It's not something that I put in new this year.
No, I know you didn't.
Okay.
I know. Does anybody have a thought about that? Okay, well, okay, I guess keep it in. All right, if there's no more discussion, I guess we'll move to a vote. All those in favor? Oh, yeah, go
There's
ahead.
no other changes? No, just, because you proposed a whole bunch of.
I did, but no one else is talking,
Changes.
so I can't be the only one.
No.
My only fun thing is, like you said, strike out Good Friday from the calendar, then why have holiday vacation? Why not just have it vacation?
Agreed.
I'm not opposed to taking out those words.
I'm just saying,
That was
if you
the most
want to do
important.
it for all, then just make it happen.
We use that terminology so we know which vacation we're talking about, like the winter vacation is coming up?
Oh, I get you.
Yeah.
How about first vacation?
December vacation.
A
just-
vacation, B vacation.
December break.
Roman numeral 1.
There you go, see?
No, I'd rather just.
So, I'm just,
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any thoughts on the half-day part? Right, that was a concern, yeah.
I guess it is a concern, but then how do less and have full days off for professional development, or was the required professional development for the teachers how does that get fit into the school year without those days?
Correct, through the chair, we do have limited PD time with our staff.
Right.
And the half-days tend to be building-based, sometimes sister schools, brother schools, but they tend to be building-based PD, which is a good thing as well. Where the full day is more extensive. And we only have, contractually we have 3, but that includes the new school year orientation.
Right, I think that the September 1st and the Good Friday half-day are half-days where everyone leaves, so I think that's one full day.
Mhm.
But it's fine if no one else has an issue with it. Then no one else has an issue with it. It's okay. All right, we ready to vote?
Can I ask, are we
Yes.
voting on just the edit of the class of 2024 commencement or other edits?
It seems like we're just voting on the
On
class
that.
of 24 commencement. Good?
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? I'm gonna oppose. Okay, motion carries. And that will be put on the website as soon as possible, right?
Yeah, I'll correct
Great.
that with it, well, yes, as soon as feasible. I think
As soon as feasible.
Yeah.
Great. All right, we'll move on to the report of the curriculum subcommittee. Dr. Ackerman?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee, also to the principal leadership team for helping to continue to evolve the student report, which is our work from our last meeting. Our committee reviewed the achievement report with feedback from stakeholder groups, including principals and members at this table. We did propose, and we will be including data from our mid-year assessments for the final report. Our mid-year data window closes on the 17th of February, and so we're targeting a school achievement report presentation for our March meeting. The second item was that the Dudley Charlton Regional School District received a grant to support high-quality instructional materials in the area of science, and that currently we're in the planning process to how to best use these additional funds. The third component is an ongoing standing agenda item, which is where we review core knowledge, language arts, or CKLA, and we just reported out that the elementary teachers will come together over the summer to continue to evolve our curriculum map. And our final item was professional development. We have a half-day coming on May 26th, and we are looking to organize and have a more detailed plan, and that information will be forthcoming.
Thank you. We'll go to the update of the Shepherd Hill Buildings, Shepherd Hill School Building Committee.
Madam Chair and School Committee, we had a meeting this past Monday evening. And so I included it in your packet, what was provided to all members of the Shepherd Hill School Building Committee. We took a tour of the building. That was over an hour, I think, with the tour. Mr. Resner facilitated the tour, and Mr. Greg Duvall facilitated the tour, and they were spectacular in bringing us to all the corners in this building to look at it as a Shepherd Hill School Building Committee. There's a lot to see in this building, and there's a lot of things that would raise concerns as you walk through the building. Not from a safety perspective, from a modernization perspective, and from a conducive to teaching and learning in the 21st century concern. So part of the meeting as well was to vote on a feasibility study value. You'll see in there is a memo that was provided to the Shepherd Hill School Building Committee, where some work was done in preparation for that feasibility study, and which included other districts and their values, and the School Building Committee voted based off of the recommendation of a value of $1 million for a feasibility study for Shepherd Hill Regional High School for a local authorization for funding. This is required by MSBA. The feasibility study will do, well, first we have to, just because we're in the eligibility period, we have to, even if we cross all the T's and dot the I's, it doesn't mean we're completely invited into feasibility. We do need a vote by the two communities to support the feasibility study. And the feasibility study will do everything, all of the, you'll first work on hiring an OPM, an owner's project manager, then you'll hire and the school building committee will interview those and recommend those person. You hire it in conjunction with MSBA. You do the same thing with an architect. Architects put in for the feasibility. And with MSBA, you look to hire that person for feasibility, and then away you go in feasibility, which could take up to 2 years, and it includes everything from community input, an evaluation of the facility, and some preliminary costing, as well as schematic design of where the Shepherd Hill School Building Committee would land on what to do with Shepherd Hill Regional High School at that point in time. So this is the first big step with community input for feasibility. Keep in mind that there will be a reimbursement on that feasibility of $1 million. Let's not say what the value is, because it isn't set yet until we get closer to a enrollment certification with Mass School Building Authority. But that reimbursement is on the entire feasibility study of $1 million. So let's say the reimbursement is 59 cents. That means that $590,000 will be reimbursed to the district, which will then be in turn through the assessments back to the communities as well. And that's why you heard the presentation on the override, and for Dudley to put this, Dudley has to figure out how to pay for the request for $463,000, and to build it into the override, we think is the best option for the community of Dudley. It is not built into anything with Charlton. They'll have to arrive at the value of the voted feasibility study moving forward through either, through whatever means they choose to do. But this is the first step, and we need to take this to the towns. Now, the town administrator for Charlton, Andrew Golas, is part of this group, so he's already fully aware. And when we met with Town Administrator Reuter, we informed him and others in Dudley Town Hall that this was approved by the Shepherd Hill School Building Committee for movement towards the town for local authorization for the feasibility study. It's an exciting first step, and there's a lot of work to be done through feasibility.
Thank you. Wonderful. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. We'll move on to adjournment. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second? Great. All those in favor? And we are adjourned.